You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
We are the Madmen of Masculinity.
Your home for healthy masculinity. We're just real men having real conversations for you.
Good afternoon, Madman Mafia.
What's up?
What's happening?
Hey, this is Kirk M. Samuels.
And I do be Jason B. Kendrick.
And we are the Madmen of Masculinity.
That's right. We're just real men having real conversations for you.
For you, for all y'all.
For all y'all.
For mama and them.
For mama and them.
For Ray and them.
All of them.
Yeah, we be having just conversations. You know, we be just talking about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Man, what is this? Is this Monday?
It's Monday.
It's our third day in a row being together.
I know you're getting tired of me.
Dude.
I can see it in your like the lines in your forehead are getting deeper.
Yeah,
you're starting to get stressed out.
Hey, lines are black don't crack, dude.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Brown don't frown, beige don't age.
Need some more lotion then, because I
burned
it off.
All of them do be getting ashy though.
It happens.
I don't be aging and cracking, but I do be getting ashy.
So you know how was it last year we did we started the divorce episode and then it turned into like the divorce month. We had to have like 4 episodes.
Mm-hmm. I've been divorced.
Yeah, has you been? How'd that go?
We'll talk about it.
Come on, man. Come on, man.
It's not about business. It's about business.
Because
this is private, man.
This is what we're talking about.
It's personal stuff, man.
Right.
Why you all been my business?
Well, we'll go 10,000 view version,
yeah.
10,000 foot view. Like, so you had one that wasn't great, and then you had one after that was better, and then now you're good.
That's one way to put it.
Okay.
This is. It took me 3 times to figure it out. First time was miserable. Miserable. Second time was like, no lawyers, none of that. And there won't be a third time.
Yeah, not good.
There won't be a third time.
I'm jumping on that hand grenade. Never gonna happen.
No, this one's bomb.
Wouldn't it have been nice, even with your first one, but just to have somebody who might be able to do a little coaching, a little training, maybe teach you how to consciously uncouple, maybe how, if it's not working out, that you can disengage in a conscious manner, maybe with a little more love and nicety versus anger and animosity.
Yeah, every year in America there's 500,000 divorces. About 1 million people every year going through divorce.
That's a big number.
That's why it's such a big deal. That's why we have had family law attorneys on. We had David in here.
Mm-hmm.
We had Judy as a whole network kind of thing, and it's a big deal. And it's one of them. If you've never been through it, multiple people that have.
Yeah, you need to talk to them, or you need to talk to somebody who is working on making that process a little bit easier, or at least a little bit more conscious. Speaking of, I brought a dude.
What?
We got a dude now.
For real?
We got a dude in the house.
You just brought a dude?
I just brought a dude. I just picked him off the street.
Put him on the street.
Come on, man. So welcome to the show, Mr. Sean Savitt.
What's up? What's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I know like we said, we've had many conversations about divorce and men, and I just love what you're doing because I know you probably have a similar story to Kirk's, but just the fact that, okay, I see, kind of the see a need, fill a need thing. Like, I see an issue here, need to work on it because, it's hard enough to break up. But if you can do it consciously, how did that kind of process? I'm just assuming that this is, you learned the hard way. How'd that work out for you?
Yeah, I'll give you kind of a quick overview of myself. So I've been divorced twice. My first marriage was in college, and it was very, very cordial. And the divorce was very simple. It was just a matter of we both decided that it wasn't working. We filled out the paperwork. We met in a public place and just, took a couple drinks, had some fun, and we were good. The second one was very, very different. And one thing that I was learning through this process was I was not the only guy getting divorced. It was happening left and right around me.
Yeah. Go ahead and pull that microphone closer to you, sir. And yeah, that is, you can pull it way closer. Kirk's a great example, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but he's had both of those experiences. I, on the other hand, still have not been married or had kids because I'm kind of terrified of divorce at this point, especially doing this show and diving down the rabbit hole and having all these guests on and hearing the horror stories. I'm like, maybe not.
Again, I think really the statistics are driven by the repeat offenders, to be honest with you.
Definitely makes those
The
numbers
more
go
times
up.
you get married, the more likely it is you'll get divorced. And so I don't know that it's necessarily as dismal as it is, especially coming out of the gate. But at the same time, it's prolific, and a whole lot of people have experienced it. A whole lot of people are experiencing it right now, and a whole lot of people will. And I tell you what, man, you won't find a more lonely period in life than when you're going through a divorce, especially, I mean, any divorce, but especially one that's difficult. My question is, so I went to public school, as we know, and I got to keep things stupid. I was about to say stupid. I got to keep things simple. Stupid. And so, what is conscious uncoupling? I mean, I couldn't even figure out how to spell it when I had to type it in.
Can't even say it.
I barely even say it, man. That's a lot of syllables. What's the whole idea? What's the whole concept behind it?
Yeah, it's actually really simple. So the more I realized that there was guys getting divorced left and right, I realized that it was the same thing over and over again. In fact, when I walked in here today, I showed you a post on Facebook that was the same question that just comes up over and over again. Like, what do I do? Ultimately, that's the question. It comes out in different forms, and that's it. And I realized it doesn't matter how many people you know. When it's your turn, when your number is called, what do you do? And divorce is part of it. How do you logistically handle an attorney? Did I get an attorney? All that type of stuff. But then there's also coping with ending that relationship, the grief of that vision that you guys had together. Like you somehow had this future together, and it's gone. It's dead. It just died. Whether you saw it coming or not is over. And there's a grieving period. And the whole idea of conscious uncoupling was to create a process that both men and women could go through to really get closure on that relationship. Because what happens most often in my experience is that people handle the divorce, then they handle the separation. And when you don't handle the separation or the loss, it comes out in your divorce. It comes out in the language, it comes out in your negotiations, it comes out in your attitude. It really gets in the way. And so the whole idea is, let's handle the separation, let's grieve the loss, let's get clear on the future while we're handling the logistics of it and working with an attorney or a mediator and actually making our agreements and doing it rather than doing it later. So
Do you find that, I know I've not even been divorced, but I've coached some guys going through that process, and just the only thing that came to me was, what is the one thing that you guys need to focus on now? Well, you're not together as a couple, but you're still parents. So being like the best co-parents you can be. Do you find that that's kind of where the lane is that most people go down, or is there just something that they have to kind of figure out for themselves?
No, I wish it was. I really wish that was where people went. Is that what you see? Can I ask that first? That
was just that one case. Like that was the one thing that came to me. I was like, well, what do you have in common? Well, you still have the kids in common. So that's the one thing you can focus on and be the best co-parents you can be, versus fighting it out all the time because you're both, hurt and heartbroken. And so when you interact with each other, it was oil and vinegar. I'm like, well, stop focusing on each other, because that's where the pain is. Focus on the children that you can be conscious co-parents with and be the best. And in that way, it like takes it off of the sore nerves in a way. It's like, because that's one thing you can agree on the kids. You want to be the best parents for them to be.
Yeah, I think on paper, that's an amazing answer. I think it's a lot easier said than done. I think what ends up happening is the bigger, more passionate thing that you have in common is your anger and resentment towards each other. And so what happens is you start, you know what? I think I misspoke. I think it's actually your insecurities, and both of them have been exposed. And what ends up happening is I start protecting myself, you start protecting yourself. And the next thing you know, you have two trained warriors or attorneys going at it. And it escalated quicker than you really thought before you even realized what's happening. And so I think that's the most common where people go is, especially for men. And I know women do it too, but my experiences with men. So what I see most often is that there's advice coming from other guys. Don't leave the home. Get an attorney. Get a real brutal pit bull of an attorney. Make sure you keep this. Make sure you keep that. Fight for this. And they're setting you up as if like you've already lost. And that's really, in my experience, like that is your first instinct, and it's not the best.
said you have to fight versus work together, or compromise.
Yeah. One of the things that you said really quick, you said grieving the loss, and the common thread through the divorce experience is grief, right? And when you recognize that you will have the stages of grief through the journey, through the process, you can almost use those as mile markers of where you are in the experience, and it's a loss. It's a death. It's a death of dreams. It's a death of hopes. It's a death of a family, the death of of a relationship. I mean, and so the idea of treating it like a death, treating it like there's grief involved, recognizing, learning about the cycles of grief, that in itself can maybe kind of help put some at least framework around the picture. The picture is still going to be kindergarten scribble scrabble, right? But you can put a frame around it. We do that with our kid. Kid come home with some ugly old. That's beautiful. Let's put it on the fridge. Yeah, we'll put a frame around it, and okay, well, maybe it just becomes abstract art. And after the fact, I think maybe after the fact, I know for me and a lot of other people, you just try to find the beauty in the abstract art. You kind of sit back and you think, man, I see this in that picture. I see that in that picture. But, but it is grief, man. And there are stages of grief involved in that. And those are a lot of the things that you will probably experience throughout the divorce process for, I would say, a large majority of people.
When you're around a lot of people that go through divorces, grief has different terms, and if we measure it differently. And so a lot of times it won't be your typical stages of grief. You'll see it as competition in dating. I have a girlfriend, I have a boyfriend, I'm already through this phase. It looks different, but it happens. It's a difficult thing.
I mean, there's so many things going on there. I mean, especially when you have kids. I mean, divorce, the ending of a relationship of any type is heartbreaking and it's traumatizing. But then you add in kids, and it's a divorce, and now you got to split property and assets and things like that. And then one of the things we talk about quite a bit is that a lot of times for us guys is we don't realize that the woman we married is not the woman that we're leaving. They become different. And then a lot of times you never think that this sweet woman that you married will turn into this pit bull and this viper and try to eat you alive when it comes to divorce. But that happens a lot. So like any amount of support and then any amount of redirecting the focus, like we can do this in a conscious way, we can do this in a healthy way versus trying to kill each other.
Well, yeah, the whole idea is to be responsive, not reactive.
Right.
And I think that's a common term. The idea here is that you can go through your divorce, you're going to go through it. Most often you don't have a choice. You're half of the problem, but you don't necessarily make half the decision. And so you're thrown into this, and it's like, what do you do? So sorry.
Get help. Right. And when you say thrown into it, people who aren't aware might push back and say, oh man, this ain't my fault or anything like that. But the reality is, especially from a man perspective, 80 to 90% of divorces are initiated by women.
But you're still there. You're still getting divorced.
Yeah, but I question what's the value of fault?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, like
that's that being responsible thing. But speaking of being responsible,
let's be responsible.
We should probably take a break.
Yeah, let's take a break.
Do it.
We'll be right back. Mad Men and Masculinity, KLDC 1220 AM.
Whoa. We doing okay, sound-wise, Tanner? Okay, thank you.
Did you have a pencil and paper?
I do. It cost you $5.
He probably got crayon.
Well, crayons work too. I'm a pro with crayons.
You ain't getting my crayons, man.
Mm-hmm.
Where did my notebook go? Oh, there it is.
I have to add a third tier to my brain to listen through these, talk through here, and remember what I was thinking.
Oh, you just talk normal. That's what once you get it in kind of in a position.
It's weird hearing it.
Yeah. Hearing your voice, and you're like.
But when you those of us that hear voices all the time, you kind of get used to. I'm used to hearing voices and trying to figure out if it's mine.
Yeah, just paid. I'll just jot notes.
Is that outdoors or what? Is that outside voices? Or is that inside?
Is that in my inside voice or my outside?
Can everybody else hear that, or is that just me?
It's just you. Speaking of just you. And we're back.
We are back. We are the Madmen of Masculinity. This is KLDC 1220 AM.
And we are in the Mile High City.
That's right. And on the interwebs.
Everywhere. Wherever you find podcasts, you can find us. Make sure you like and subscribe. And yeah, if you happen to be watching us live, you can go on to YouTube and comment, and we'll see it live. We'll add you part of the show. But we're talking about conscious uncoupling with Mr. Sean Savitt, because this is what he teaches. It's something he's passionate about. It's something I think more people need to think about, because the ratios aren't great out there for marriage and divorce. I mean, it's like even first marriages is 50%, and then it goes up from there. So you need some support because it's a grieving process, but you also, maybe you could make it a little bit easier. I mean, Kirk, you had that experience, right? I mean, you had the first one that was a nightmare, and the second one not so great, or it was much better.
No, man, the first one, you talking lawyers. I mean, it was bad. I mean, it was really bad. And I learned a lot of lessons. I learned a lot of divorce lessons. I didn't learn a lot of relationship, personal intimacy, vulnerability, get rid of your addiction lessons. I didn't learn any of that stuff.
So you learned a lot of what you didn't want to do.
So I brought the baggage from the first one into the second one. And the second time I was better. I was equally as bad at being a husband, but better at being a divorced husband. If that makes any sense at all. And so, those experiences, and thankfully since that one, I've fixed a lot of stuff, gotten my poop in a group. And now from a marriage and relationship perspective, man, I'm digging it, man. I'm finally experiencing the intimacy that I've always wanted.
So yeah, like I said, it's proof you have dyslexia. I did that backwards.
Did I?
Kind of
did. Something like that, man. So Sean, when you say, so he said you teach. What do you teach?
Teaching, coaching. The first thing that I do is I want to give people going through a divorce some insight onto the process. I think most fear and most stress and reactive behavior as a result of it comes from not knowing what's going on. Attorneys are throwing big words at you. They're demanding things. They're assuming and there was no playbook handed to you at any point. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make is they expect their attorney to teach them the process. That is the most expensive way to get a law degree, and you don't end up with a degree at the end of it.
It's a big bill. Whole stack of bills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a big part of it is how do you go through that process? What do you expect? How to communicate with attorneys? Like, they're a breed of their own. My second divorce was actually a divorce from an attorney, and that process was a little bit different.
I bet.
Was she a family law attorney?
Family law, dependency, neglect. She was very, very well versed on the process.
You just went into like the dojo with the ninja and didn't know what happened and getting killed. Man.
That's like having a proctologist with big hands.
SPC, man. Come on.
I don't know where that came
That's the most accurate description.
I don't know where it came from, but it feels real. Like that
definitely feels
real, man.
I'm sure that's how you feel about it. Like
how that just is what it is. And so you're saying you kind of come alongside, if you will, and almost like a coach from the sidelines, kind of thing of here's what you can expect. I'm asking. This is a question.
Yeah, so it's a very structured course. It's created in a way that helps you kind of process through it. You're going to go through this journey, and honestly, you're going to go through it one way or another. The question is, do you want to do it head over heels, or do you want to be conscious of what you're doing and actually make the choices? What I see people battle for when they're going through a divorce is control. It's always control. We behave our way to safety, and most often that's through control. The best way to get that control is to make your own choices and to make them consciously, and not to make them influenced by spite, principles, other people's behaviors. She did this, I'm doing that. That type of behavior is the rabbit hole that will come back and inevitably beat the death of you.
Yeah, it sounds like it's probably the most important thing that most people don't do, because they get so caught up in the moment, they get so caught up in the emotions, and then they end up battling and all those things. And when you're angry, you are not thinking clearly. You go into the amygdala, you get out of prefrontal cortex, you're in the amygdala, you're in the lizard brain, you're just trying to survive. So you're not thinking clearly, you're not smart. And so it sounds like a very smart idea to have somebody there to kind of guide you, like, here's what you can expect. And hey, you're getting a little all out of pocket. Maybe let's focus on this. Having somebody like you there sounds like a great idea, because you can't do anything but make it worse when you're reacting instead of responding, especially reacting out of anger.
Yeah, people say that your true self comes out, or your true colors come out when you're in a situation like this. And I think that's one of the biggest lies.
Yeah.
I think these are situations that actually create people to act out of character because they are acting for survival. And that's what it is. It's that reptilian brain that you're talking about, that fight, flight, freeze.
Mm-hmm.
When we go through all of them. And it's the freeze. It's that final one where in my opinion, most people get stuck. You go through a divorce and you just freeze up.
I just found out, I think it was not this past week. I think I just found out in the past week and a half that a really good friend of mine is getting divorced. She actually reached out and texted me and told me that she was filing. And man, it was a heartbreaking scenario. He didn't reach out. She reached out, and then I reached out to him, and then kind of caught him in the middle. And the reality of the situation is, he was having to go move and go find a place to sleep, go find a place to stay. And, he didn't really have much stuff. Basically, he was loading up his pickup truck and going to stay in somebody's basement until he figured out, what's next, kind of thing. And so that's how we end up being in the survival. And then you get to the point of, okay, then it gets into the logistics. Then it gets into all of figuring out where I'm gonna stay, where I'm gonna live, what life is gonna look like. And then it's like, okay, a lot of it is the legal process of the dissolution from the state of whatever you live in, state of Colorado, state of Mississippi, state of whatever, wherever you're living, the legal process of undoing all of that. I don't know if that's legal uncoupling. Maybe the conscious uncoupling is the heart mind centered process of the journey. Maybe that's the difference in the two.
Yeah, it's all encompassing. So while you're going through that process of, well, I should say processing your emotions, and I hate to say, your feelings and that stuff, because it's a whole lot more than that. Part of this process is get a therapist. Again, I'll go back to your attorney's at the place to be telling your story. Like, that's way too expensive. Get a therapist, but also get a coach, because there's things that therapists can and can't do. And there's only so many times you can answer the question, like, how does that make you feel? Before you really realize that it's not going anywhere.
No, it would be very helpful, I'm sure. And I'm sure you both can assess this you're coming to that point. And, it's like for most of us guys, most of the lessons we learned the hard way, because there wasn't a lot of good training out there. We didn't have a lot of rite of passage. Most of our dads are too busy trying to provide, if they were even around, to really raise us or to teach us. They assumed, I think in my experience, I think he assumed I was going to learn anything on my own or in school, or somebody else is going to teach me. So having this, this is a traumatic experience. This is going to be life-changing. This is going to be one of those keystone moments of your life. And to not have some support there, to not have somebody say, hey, let me guide you through this, or at least be there to see all the blind spots and all the things you can't see. Because I could just imagine if I was in that situation, I would just be tunnel vision on survival. I couldn't see the forest for the trees or anything else. And so having somebody there just to say, hey, watch out for this, look out for that, don't say this, do say that. Just having somebody there to coach and guide you, I think is just a brilliant idea, especially when you're going through something like that that's so consuming.
Yeah, so let me talk, I guess, a little on the structure of the program. That was kind of a perfect segue.
See, I'm good like that.
Yeah, you are. You nailed it.
You don't want to.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay. All right.
So habits are created in 90 days, like a minimum of 90 days. And so it starts with a 12-week program. In that program, you're going to learn to navigate, how to work with attorneys, how to find a therapist, what do you do with your friends? Like friends that are like mutual friends, your own friends. Have you been talking to them? Have you not? Are you getting out of the house? What are you doing? Like, is your work slipping? We're going to take a look at all of that. And then part of the process is also pushing you to get outside your box. So there's some experiential learning to it, which to me, people talk about like, I'm a visual learner, or I have to hear it, or I have to see it, or I have to touch it. Personally, I believe we need to learn all of it. It's reinforcement through multiple channels. And so there's some really cool experiences you'll go through in this course. And then after the 12-week program, you're not cured, you're not fixed, you weren't broken to begin with. I'm right there with you. I'm part of your team. I'm part of your support system. This naturally developed because I've already been in this role for so many people who are going through divorces where they're calling me and they're just having one of those days. And if you've been through a divorce, you know what those days are. I don't have to say anything more than that. And you just got to get it out. You're not really doing anything more than processing it. And it's like, yeah, I could wait 48 hours to get into my therapist, but it's not fair to dump it on your friends either. So there's this balance of processing it, and that's what I'm there for.
And I could definitely see a benefit from a perspective of a lot of men anyway live isolated, live cut off, live alone. Most men don't have a network of deep, like brotherly tight friendships, like 2 a.m. guys that you can call. Most guys don't live like that as a natural thing. And then when you go through an experience like this, you add in the embarrassment, you add in maybe some shame, maybe you add in some blame, all those kinds of things. And then that just pushes you further out into the nether regions. That pushes you further out into the isolation zone. And so like when I talked to my buddy, last week, couple weekends ago, I got real, like, hey, where's your gun? Stuff like that, like, getting into some of the nuts and bolts of are you safe? Like, are you safe? Like, legit. Straight up questions. And so I can see there being a benefit to having someone like you to walk through this scenario. To your point, if you go to your lawyer with this, you can get a bill. If you go to your therapist, you go get a bill. I would hope that there's some financial investment in somebody working with you, but in any case, having an alternate party to be able to go to, to talk out some of these things could be key.
Well, in the worst place that most people is like the number one place that they do take that stuff is to their co-parent or to their ex.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the worst place to dump it. When you're all upset and you're taking it out on them.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the conversations that I have with people end up with them saying, yeah, I guess I don't really need to say anything to them at all. Like most often you don't have to respond.
Yeah.
Like the
That's
best
probably
response.
a good idea, especially, you gotta have somebody too, because if you want to keep friends, because like Kirk was saying, we have been, one reason we do this show, one reason we advocate so much for men's groups and healthy masculinity in the way of men coming together, because that's a natural process. You get out of school, you get married, start having a family, and your friends just they go do the same thing. So now you don't have a core group of friends. And then whatever friends you do have, they're probably co-friends, they're probably friends as a couple. And so it's probably not good to go venting to any of those friends, because they might not really be your friend. It might be her friend or whatnot. And then if you want to keep your friends, they're not therapists, they're not getting, they're not lawyers. So they probably don't really want to hear all that.
Yeah.
And speaking of not wanting to hear all that.
We want to hear break.
Oh yeah, let's do that break.
We got sponsors.
We're gonna dig in some more. Let's take
I got a great question when we come back. Trust me, save the question. I'm gonna save it. We'll be right back after this. Mad Men of Masculinity. Boom. That kind of stuff is important, man. Just in terms of being able to vent. Being able to just like, hey, if you're not a cusser, sometimes you need to cuss.
What happens when you don't let the steam out of a steam?
Oh man, no doubt, no doubt. You can't open the pressure, the Instapot, until you let out the steam.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It won't even physically open. And and so many, when we bottle that stuff up, it's gonna come out in ugly ways. It's gonna come out in ugly ways when you don't let that stuff out. And so to be able to vent, to be able to let that stuff out, man.
The other thing I want to comment when we get back is people do go to their friends and their friends just want to help.
Yeah.
But they give the worst.
Yeah.
Like they pity party. They yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
yeah, that's one of those ones that's always like, you are a part of this.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. All right, we'll come back to
let's come
that.
back and do
We'll come back right to that. Then I got a question. Yeah, we're back.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, your boys are back.
Boys are back in town.
Mad Men Mafia. Rise
Yes,
up.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? When men are better, everybody's better. Men are like the tide, and when the tide comes in, all boats rise.
Raise up.
Communities are better, households are better, workplaces are better. We're all safer when men are better. And so that's why we're passionate about what we do. That's why we spend our time, our effort, our resources to make things happen. And that's why we reach out to guys like Sean to come in and talk about some topics. Right before we left, I talked about, you know, having people that you can reach out to and talk to, but there might be some scenarios where maybe you don't want to talk to, maybe you don't want to talk to, Craig and them.
Yeah, you may not want to be talking to your friends if you want to keep them, or I think Sean had a good point advice during the break, because that was
Yeah, so the first thing guys do, and women do it too, but I will say, I can only speak from the men's perspective. The first thing you do is often you call your buddies. You go fishing, you drink some beer, you go to the bar, or whatever it is, whatever your jam is. You get to talking, and they want to help you. They're your friends. So how do you help somebody like that? You support them. All the bad stuff they're saying, you jump on the bandwagon, you start saying it too. And next thing you know, you guys are saying some pretty bad stuff. It's maybe getting texted out, or other people are hearing it. That really all you're doing is putting fuel on a fire that shouldn't have been lit in the first place. And so that's one of those things where it's like, you got to be careful. Like you want to go to your friends. That's what your friends are there for. But pay attention to the advice that they're giving you. Is it really the advice that they would take themselves, or is it coming out in the heat of the moment because they just want to support you and end up really just putting fuel on that fire?
Yeah, so many times, they get your side of the story, so they're giving you this horrible advice and not really holding you accountable. It's always like, they're not therapists, they're not coaches, so they're just your friends. And instead of being like, hey, maybe that's not a great idea, like, yeah, you go, it's all her fault or whatever. And yeah.
Oh, we've all heard this story of, I didn't like her anyway. A month later, they get back together and they're engaged, and you're like, oh man, I shouldn't have said that.
Not at all. Hey, I might be about to get us canceled.
Do it. We need some more ratings.
Yeah. And by the way, if you hate this show, if you don't like anything that we say,
please write long sentences.
Put long sentences in the comments. Hit the like button. And we made it flip so that if you hit the like button, you'll never see us again in your timeline.
See us again.
Or if you really don't want to see us, man, the equivalent to just banning us completely from your life is hitting subscribe. That right there will completely get rid of us, and you'll never see us.
Hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell icon, and then that way you'll know when we're coming up, so you can avoid us.
So if what I'm about to say is going to make somebody mad, that's how you get rid of it. So I've been divorced twice. I've seen a lot of divorce. Worked with guys that struggle with porn, and 7 out of 10 divorces involve somebody with a porn problem. So I've seen a lot of guys go through divorce, good, bad, and ugly. I'm gonna say that one of the common factors that I've seen is that how the degree to which the divorce is ugly really depends on the wife. Like more often than not, it's how bad does she want to fight causes him to have to fight equally bad or worse. Most guys don't come out of the gate with, I'm going to get her. Because again, first of all, most divorces by far are initiated by the wife. And obviously I'm speaking in heterosexual terms here. But, and so in most of these cases, how bad does she want to fight will dictate how much it's going to cost. And a lot of times, especially depending on what the financial circumstances is, a lot of times she doesn't mind fighting hard because she's planning on making you pay for the lawyer bill, right? And so these kind of scenarios happen a lot. Again, what I found by far, more often than not, men aren't the ones that are escalating things. Men are normally, on the defense, but even on defense, you blitz the quarterback, right? And so I'm not saying men are passive, but what I'm saying is more often than not, how heated or contentious it's going to get. More often than not, in my experience, not only personal but anecdotally, is dependent on that. And so that being said, that's the lead in. And so some of y'all might get mad, whatever. Women, it is what it is. I mean, period. Prove me wrong. If you out there get divorced, prove me wrong. I dare you. Just let it go away. And again, I give all credit to my second wife. We didn't even use lawyers. I mean, man, we just went down there and filled out everything ourselves. Neither one of us were lawyers. We found out what we needed to do. We divided up all of our assets, our debt, sold the house, split all that up. When we went to divorce court, we sat at the same table in divorce court. I mean, people, if you saw us right now in the same room, you'd never guess we were divorced. People were saying we should teach people. I mean, and so, and again, the difference between the first and second is what it is. That being said, that is a huge long runway leading up to my question. Do you think it's possible to consciously uncouple when one spouse is really vindictive, really just venomous, really wanting to hurt the other person? Do you think it's possible to consciously uncouple only on one side when the other is being completely the opposite?
That's absolutely my favorite question I've been asked.
Boom.
That's fantastic.
That was a good question.
But before I answer that question, I want to go back to your point right before that. A 5 foot tall guy walks on the basketball court differently than a 7 foot tall guy.
Right.
Men walk into a courtroom differently than women do, because there's whether you like it or not, there's an extreme disadvantage. Men have what I would say is the same or worse disadvantage in the courtroom is women have in the workplace. It's miserable. So you can't come in there being aggressive. You have to be humble for the bit that you get. And unfortunately, that is how it is.
That's brilliant. I agree. Yeah.
So then let me answer your question.
Your best question ever.
Conscious
Your favorite
uncoupling.
question that you've ever been asked.
Yeah. Conscious uncoupling is not about your couple. It's not about the other person. It's a self journey. You are learning to branch out on your own. And part of that, a lot of people say, I'm going to find myself. And that it's that process, except we're going to take responsibility for it. You're going to find yourself. You're going to decide who you want to be. And you're going to own it. And you're going to go get that person. Go be that person. In order to do that, you don't need anybody else. And I will say, once you process that and once you are whole on your own, if you are open to someone else coming into your life, that's how it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's something. I mean, even in the book we collaborated on, 7 Secrets of Modern Dating, that's one of the things I think people have neglected, because we've been taught the Disney fairy tale of, oh, you complete me, Jerry Maguire thing. And you are complete by yourself, but when you keep looking outside yourself or somebody else, and then you get into these relationships and realize that you're not completing each other, you're basically draining each other dry because you don't know how to find yourself and be yourself on your own. And so it sucks, because a lot of times that's what happens is you get in these relationships, they don't work out, you get a divorce, and then hopefully that's rock bottom enough for you to take the time to work it out and find yourself so that you know who you are going forward versus what tends to happen. I think that's why the divorce rates go so much higher on second and third divorces and so on, because instead of doing the work to heal themselves and find themselves, they're latching on to the next life raft and saying, you complete me, please. And it doesn't work that way.
You got to fix the one in the mirror, as opposed to focusing on the one in the window, right? The one in the mirror is the one that's been in every broken relationship of your life. And so, we repeat a lot of these patterns. And to your point, Sean, when you make it a self kind of thing in terms of not only the ownership and accountability, but the growth and all those other kind of things, then maybe it is, seeing the tragedy amongst the beauty, or the beauty amongst the tragedy, I guess you would say.
Collateral Beauty. They made a movie about it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to make a pretty picture out of something that's ugly.
Right.
Like, I know, you want to find the silver lining in it and the value in it and take it and move forward. But I personally prefer to call it what it is. Like, it's horrible.
Yeah.
And I wish nobody upon it. And there's no lipstick that's going to make that pig pretty. Like, it's just not going to happen. The goal is to move forward as yourself. So the way I look at it is, if you don't take responsibility, you're not going to grow. If it's somebody else's fault, you're going to be stuck there. If it's somebody else's fault, you're going to go into another relationship and you're going to do the same thing again. It's going to be their fault, and you're going to leave, and you're just going to keep doing that. And until you take responsibility for the role that you are playing in it, you're just going to hit repeat, and you're going to continue.
And that's how people keep saying all men are this, or all women are this. Guys say, man, all women are whatever. No, it's just the ones you keep getting with.
All the men you attract, all the women you attract.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's been so long since I've been in a relationship, because I started my personal development journey right about the time my last relationship ended, when I realized, oh wait, especially going through that, the training we did, it was like, oh, I'm the common denominator. well, I better fix me before I go ruin somebody else or bring my luggage and baggage and all my traumas into this other thing. And then it just kind of spiraled into, and then 10 years later, I'm like, maybe it's too late now. But that's the whole point of these journeys that we go through of personal development or just life and experience. And if you're not learning and just repeating, you're just going to get the same thing over and over again. And I see a lot now. I mean, Kirk was mentioning that the high number of divorces initiated by women, and it's like, why is that? What is that? Well, I don't know what the training is, but there's some reason that they're not taking accountability. And then you look at we've joked about it, but it's true. You look at the numbers, the highest number of divorces in couples is lesbian couples. And those are both ladies. It's like 75-80%, like first time. So I'm not saying it's all the ladies, but there's some evidence that could say maybe there's somebody not taking accountability or responsibility for why these things are ending. I think a lot of times it's just that being emotionally manipulated, not having a strong masculine foundation or in the home or as a father, not having that training. And that could be on both sides too, where you're like, nobody knows how to hold a foundation. So when it gets rocky and rough, then it's just like, well, I'm out because social media says there's 8 million options out there and I can just go get a new one.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Good luck. Because you're going to get the same thing you got last time.
Exactly. You'll get a new one just like the last one. So, so it's been 10 years. Are you still broken? How long is it going to take you to fix yourself, man?
At this point, I don't even think I'm broken. At this point, it's just the system's broken and I don't want to play.
Gotcha.
I take my ball and go home.
Gotcha. I can dig it. No, that's fair. But the whole idea of taking the pause for the cause and working on self, that's probably the most conscious thing a person can do, period, just in life, in any kind of way.
Yeah, and I think the only thing that makes it better is appropriately timing it after a big life transition. So you go through a marriage, you go through a divorce, like those are the next 90 days that you really want to set yourself up for success on both ends of it. It's funny. It used to be more prevalent in our culture than it is today, but you actually get married and then you spend 90 days of coaching on how do you now live this new life. So I'm on the other end of it because that's where I've experienced. I'm certainly not a master at marriage.
They used to actually have training. I know there was like pastors and preachers and different people who would like sit the couple down, like, okay, now you're engaged. Now here's this whole process you're going to go through to learn how to become man and wife. And of course, back in those days too, we also had much more, many more examples of healthy relationships or more healthy relationships and families staying together and things like that. So there's much more of that training going on.
I think you hit the nail on the head, and I'm not even sure you knew it or you noticed that you did it.
You probably didn't.
It used to come through religious organizations. And what I've noticed in over the years is that that's not really where people are looking for these resources anymore. So it's like they're out there, but they're not in the place where people want to go. You could go to your church or your temple and find divorce coaching, and you're going to get it with a perspective and judgment of whatever their catalyst is, whatever that organization is, whatever their beliefs are. One thing that I think separates me that provides the value is I'm judgment free. Like, I'm not going to tell you how to parent. By no means a perfect parent, and I don't have your answers. The same thing goes with divorce. Like, I didn't do it perfectly. I'm not a perfect husband, but I can certainly tell you, like, here's the awarenesses you need to know, and hey, here's what's going on right now. And is that the choice you really want to make?
I know we got to choose right now. We got to choose that break.
Let's choose a break.
Do it.
Madmen and Masculinity, ALDC. Be right back.
How do you guys know when to do that?
He's got a timer right here. We try to count. We try to do the math in our head from the timer on the screen, but after the first one, it doesn't work.
Dude, I didn't even know if there's a timer on there.
Normally, it's easy on the first break because you can see 13 minutes.
Yeah, like 13 and a half is good.
After that, because we don't always take a break. We don't always small talk for the same amount of time. So
there's times where I'm looking at the timer thinking, 26 minutes, and then we had like a 5 minute off air thing. So,
but no, I just used it. But then last week we were at home and we didn't have the timer, so
I was using my phone.
We get out of system.
Is this doing okay with the
seems
sound
like
and stuff?
I've been hearing the echoes and nobody has been yelling.
Yeah, check my phone.
Okay. We might have found a fix for it. Hey, check that out.
I mean, I picked this phone and the tablet I have for this capability.
Yeah.
So I would have been surprised if it didn't work.
I just know that one time the first time we had Barry Overton on, we tried to use all three of our phones.
Well, this is the face one too, because those cameras are way better.
Yeah.
There's like 6 of them on the back.
Yeah. That's okay. We make it work.
All right, home stretch.
Ready? And we're back.
Yep.
This is the Madman Show,
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking about things that you really ought to know.
Yeah. Oh, did you rhyme? Did you?
Yeah,
You ain't even smart enough to do that on your own, man. That was an accident, man. Just broken clock right twice a day kind of thing. Man. That's why you did that.
But I got to put up with y'all.
Yeah, I tell guys all the time, dude, save your marriage. Spend all of your money trying to save your marriage. Go to all the counseling, do all of whatever you got to do to save your marriage, because you do not want to go. Divorce, not only is it traumatic to go through, but it sets you back. Had I not been divorced, man, had I been married this whole time, 30 years or whatever it would have been, in life, I'd have been so far ahead, man. I had accumulated much more. I wouldn't have been paying 20-some years of child support between the two divorces, so much as, I mean, so on and so forth. I tell guys all the time, do whatever you got to do to save your marriage. I hate divorce because of just what it does to people, what it does to the two individuals, definitely what it does to the kids. I mean, you know, you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube for the kids. I mean, and so I tell guys all the time is do whatever you got to do to save your divorce. I mean, to save your marriage and not do divorce. And that being said, you know, when or if you find yourself in the valley, the dark valley of divorce, it's a great time to rebuild. It's a great time. It's like real estate. You know, you make money on buy. You know, you buy low. And so that's a great opportunity to reset, to reboot, to get with a guy like you, Sean, and come out of it as best as you can. You might smell like smoke, but come out of the fire as best as you can.
Yeah, you know, you're not broken. Like, that's the thing. You went through an experience.
Jason's broken.
Well, that's different.
Yeah, that's different. He's broken.
You need me to be broken.
I'm letting you know.
You need me to be broken so you can look better.
That's true.
It's true.
Makes me feel better about
But actually, he mentioned something that I think we need to talk about, because you do other coaching and training as well. And he mentioned something about, you know, the kids, you know, kids from divorce. And most of us either have that experience or, you know, been down that road. And we all know people have been divorced. It's the most common thing in the world nowadays. But the kids, you do something like that, right?
Yeah, parenting's hard enough as it is. Parenting and divorce is just a monster of a thing to tackle. Solo parenting is just like that mountain that you never summit. So yeah, I do parent coaching too. And a lot of that, it's parent centric, and it's really, I hate calling it parent coaching. I help parents understand the behavior of their children. And once they understand the behavior, most parents make better decisions.
Yeah.
I'm careful about saying better, good, bad decisions. But I think it's kind of common knowledge that a lot of parents will think a certain way, they'll want to parent a certain way, they want to be a certain parent, and then life just catches up with them and they end up parenting the way that they were parented. And usually they're the first one to say it maybe wasn't the best way to.
Yeah, I mean, so many of us are like, I'm never going to be like my parents. And then you used to get a kid and all of a sudden you hear your dad's voice or your mom's voice coming out of your head. And I think that's a great example, because you react to these children when they're going through phases, which in a lot of ways, there's a lot of books out there I've seen, some I've read, where they go through these phases of, you know, they're clingy, they want to be on their own, and then, you know, there's certain needs that they're trying to get. And if you can figure that out, then you're less reactionary as a parent. But most of us are just white knuckling it, like, this kid, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I'll be probably the only parenting coach that will openly say kids are annoying. Like, I love kids, but like, they're difficult, and it's no fault of their own. They don't have the regulation that we have to make rational choices. So they're going to repeat the same thing over and over again, and they're going to run into the same wall over and over again. And as an adult watching, it's one of the most frustrating things in the world. Like, I asked you to do that. Why do I have to ask you again?
Because my brain's not formed yet, Daddy.
Yeah.
That's why the government gives you a write-off for kids. It's terrible, man. It's tough sometimes, man. It is especially tough. And then when you go through divorce, man, you up the degree, especially when it's any kind of divorce, but especially when it's a contentious divorce, really the only ones that come out better are the attorneys because they get paid, and the ones that suffer the most are the kids.
People say that a lot, and I've been guilty of saying that too. And I'll say I've been in the attorney's home. It's no better. They take it home with them.
Oh yeah, I mean, I got some great friends. A great friend that is a divorce attorney, a great friend that I've known for a long time, and yeah, they take all that stuff home with them. They don't just get to walk away. But at the same time, it's their job, it's their profession. They get a paycheck, right? I mean, so what I'm not saying that it's fun for them.
Some of them,
sure, some of them enjoy it. I was listening to and I love his books, man. Jim Sexton is probably, man, I just love to hear him talk. I love his books, all those kinds of things, man. And just being a divorce attorney, I mean, just to hear his rationale out of, they do take a lot of that stuff with them, and they do experience that stuff with their clients. But in terms of the equation, across the board of all parties involved in a divorce, they're pretty much the only ones that come out better than the two people that went in. Like the day they signed the day you sign the agreement for them to represent you.
Yeah, the attorney is always the winner, and the kids are always the loser.
The worst loser, and it's terrible, man. It's absolutely.
And they're the
terrible.
two people who had nothing to do with it.
Well, that's
the crazy thing.
Something to be aware of too. Why it's so good to have somebody like you come in and coach and be there during that process, because the kids can be sometimes left behind or not even thought about because you're in such a survival mode. I know, and even when my parents divorced, like it was so clean, like they separated, like dad just moved out one day, but there was no discussion, there was no explanation, and as a 5-6-year-old kid, I started thinking it was my fault, so I started getting all that trauma and stuff. So like having somebody say, hey, probably a good idea to explain, why dad's not here anymore, or why, this happened or that happened, so the kid has something to grasp onto versus, oh, they're just not here anymore, then they make up their own story.
And that's where, for me, the two collide, the helping parents and helping people go through divorce. There's no great way to say it. The best way to do it, most kids, especially you're talking 5-year-olds, is storytelling, books, resources, movies. Don't try to be the wizard that has the right words. There's other people out there, and that's their forte, and there's some amazing books out there that, find someone like me. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I know these books. Tell me how old your kids are, and I can direct you to, like, hey, why don't you grab this one? Why don't you grab that one? They might really connect with this. Again, I don't have your answers, but I could certainly throw a million things up, and you, as a parent, that's their job. Just you put it in front of your kids.
My first divorce, my kids were 4 and 2. The two that I had at the time were 4 and 2, and that was pretty much like a dad moved out, and next thing you know, whatever. My second divorce, they were more like late elementary, middle school-ish age-ish, I don't know, 10, 12, that kind of thing. And I'll never forget that moment where we all sat down at the kitchen table, all 4 of us. And we explained to the kids that, mommy and daddy aren't going to be together or we're getting a divorce. And I will never forget the moment that I saw the look on their faces and everything changed for them, and their faces melted literally right off their skulls, and ran off crying, and I could just see everything that they thought was their world just coming to an end. It was not pretty at all, even though that was probably the best case scenario of the 2 of us literally sitting down at the table with the kids, and they saw, if nothing else, we modeled to them that we are all kind of in this together, even though this is not a great thing. So yeah, there's no easy scenario in either one of those kind of things.
Well, definitely from my own experience, like it's better to say something than to not.
Yeah.
Because kids are always, they're egocentric anyway.
Yeah.
And so they're gonna make it about themselves. And so you got to do what you can as a parent to say, hey, this is not about you as much as you think it is. It's just mommy and daddy can't work together or whatever, however you phrase it. But try to take that off of them, because they're gonna make it about them if you don't do that.
They're not just going to make it about them. It's those little one-liners that become their fundamental truth for the rest of their lives.
Right. As we bring this thing in for a landing here, I will say that one of the things in the context of all this that I learned, there's this concept of conscious uncoupling. There's also a conscious coupling. And I think, as we get together and as we go into marriage, if we do that consciously, and I'm talking stuff like, prenups and the tough conversations and all these other kind of things, then, it's less likely that we'll find ourselves in the position to need a Sean, to need a, attorney so-and-so, Esquire, whatever it is. the conscious coupling could be a great scenario, a great solution to conscious uncoupling. How we go into things. Are you clear going in? Are you clear with a lot of things? Are you clear from, the things that caused you to fail in the past and all that? And are you clear with where this marriage is when you go into it? I'm so glad that we went into it wide open this time around. I learned a whole lot and implemented it into the going into the marriage and into the relationship.
Well, I'll admit it's probably one of the reasons I'm still single, because I do implement that quite a bit, especially nowadays. I mean, I'll still be on Facebook dating or whatever, and then start talking to somebody, and then pretty quickly be like, "So, what's your intention? How do you see this going? What, you have kids and I don't," and and I'll start asking those direct questions. And a lot of times the girls are out, I can't handle it. But I mean, there are some there. One of them recently was like, "Wow, you should do a podcast or something." I was like, "Funny, you should say that."
For real.
Funny, you should say that. Here's a link. Check that out.
You guys get a lot of resistance with prenups, the idea of them?
From the ladies, quite a bit.
I am such a fan at this point. The last thing the last thing we did before we got married was go through that process. First thing we did after we got married is did estate planning. When we went through the prenuptial, it wasn't even the legality. It was all the deep conversations that we had to open up everything, open up all the books, the bank accounts, the talk. You got to talk through all of these things, the uncomfortable stuff that you don't come into it with shadows and secrets. You come into it wide open and educated. And so from a legal perspective, it kind of gets a bad rap. But man, I wish everybody would have those deep level of conversations like we had before we got married.
I love that. I think the marriage contract, and that's what it is. A marriage contract is like the biggest contract you sign in your life. Yeah. And what 99.9% of people sign the boilerplate contract.
Absolutely. And you just don't. But every marriage ends, just like every life is going to end. We do estate planning because one day one of us is not going to be here. Right. And we do, and every marriage ends at our vows till death do us part. And so, we cover both sides of that whole thing, but to have those deep conversations, the nuts and bolts, the nooks and crannies of life, and what I have, what you have, all these other kind of things, man, that is the stuff that intimacy and depth is made of. And so, if nothing else, I think that prenuptial process just makes you have deep conversations.
Yeah, I mean, if you're still out there not dealing with your stuff and afraid to bring that up or have those hard conversations in a relationship, you shouldn't be dating.
Exactly.
Because, I mean, especially if you get into a marriage and you can't have those conversations, I mean, how can you trust the person across from you that you're supposed to be, signing this contract with if you can't have hard conversations?
I hear the argument that people come in and say, well, I trust my partner. And I go, well, if you trusted your partner, you'd have the conversation.
Right. Exactly. And have it when you're at your wedding, at your bliss. Like have it when you
like each other still.
Have it before you spend 50 grand on a wedding.
When you're in love, right?
You don't want to return presents.
That's the best time to have these conversations when they can't do no wrong. Like this is the before story. I mean, have those conversations then and get the awkward stuff. And then when awkward stuff comes up in the relationship, you've already had weird conversations. So let's talk about this because we've already done that.
This is how Disney ruined us all with this whole ride off into the sunset and you complete me stuff. Mm-hmm. Real relationships about digging that foundation of uncomfortable contact, concepts and talking about it.
Sean, how can people get a hold of you, man?
Pretty simple. nestinmaine.com, N-E-S-T and Maine, like a lion, M-A-N-E.com. Right now you can learn about the 2 classes that I coach. You can also just sign up, subscribe, get the newsletter, that type of stuff.
And you also do videos and stuff too, right? Where can people find those at?
Yeah, we're on TikTok and YouTube. There's not a whole much of a library developing there right now. So I would say jump on the website, subscribe, get our newsletter, and as those other platforms develop, you'll be in the loop. And
as ADD kids, we need to see you on TikTok before we go to the website.
Yeah, right.
So people and guys definitely need to reach out to you, man. When you're going through that, man, you need a wingman. You need a wingman going through that stuff. And man, I highly recommend it. And good luck to you, man. And thank you for doing what you do because it's a dark time for a lot of guys, man. And for you to do that, to be there with them, man, to shine light in dark places, man, that's a gift. So thank you for doing all that. We appreciate you.
Thank you for joining the Mad Men Mafia. We appreciate you. I'm sure we're
come back,
because
come back, hang with your boys, man.
Yeah, we just started getting warmed up in this conversation.
For real.
There's a million directions.
Oh, yeah. So check us out, madmenradio.com. KLDC 1220 AM in the Mile High City, man. You can look for us online. We ain't hard to find. We out here. Your boys are out here, man. Reach out to, subscribe, like, comment, all that kind of stuff. We'll reply back.
Yeah. Holla at you boys. And until next time, Mad Men out.